Good morning, good morning, good morning, my brothers and sisters. Listen, this is the day that the Lord hath made, and we are going to rejoice and be exceedingly glad in it. Let me say, welcome to the Mount Olive morning devotional. So good to have you all joining me this morning. I just felt led to have a word from the Lord on today. I'm not sure exactly who this word is for, but we are thankful. I want you to know today that God is working in your waiting. Listen, uh, God has blessed me with this word on this morning to share with someone because you're waiting on something. You're waiting on God to do something. I'm just trying to wait for a few more people to jump on with us this morning, but you are waiting on God to do something. And my brothers and sisters, I want to encourage you today that God is about to do it in this season for you. Listen, be encouraged. Let's just talk about how God works in our waiting for just a minute, though. Most parents would agree that their children don't want to wait for anything. The last thing kids want to hear mom say is not now. It can prompt anger, it can prompt frustration, it can even prompt hopelessness. This disease of waiting follows most of us into our adult years. We may not respond with the same emotional outburst as children, but most of us still hate waiting for what we want. And our modern society just makes it worse. We want everything done quickly, and new devices constantly spring up to meet those demands and encourage our impatience. We're not used to waiting for anything, and our modern technology caters to our immediate desires. The less we feel willing to wait. Such is our dilemma as Christians, my brothers and sisters. While society makes every attempt to make our life easier and faster, works on a very different timetable. In his mind, nothing is wrong with waiting. In fact, God desires that we learn how to wait on him. Because God is working while we're waiting. Something actually happens while we're waiting on God. God uses waiting to change us. The story of Adam and Eve is a story of rebellion against God. Once they believed that God didn't have their best interest in mind, they decided to go ahead without God and do what they wanted. They became, in effect, their own God. Too often, this is exactly what we do today. When God tells us to wait, we don't want to trust him. We go ahead and find ways to accomplish what we want to happen. This tendency to push God to the side goes against his plan for us. He has created us to be in relationship with him. It causes us to get in trouble and brings pain. What good is it to gain the whole world now? Whatever it is we think we want and forfeit our souls in intimacy with God in Mark 8 and 36. God wants us to learn how to follow him and put down our demanding selves to calm that screaming child in us. One way he helps us do this is to say, wait. That miserable, uncomfortable, sometimes painful state of silence is one of God's most powerful tools to set us free when he just tells us to wait. If we're willing, that is choosing at the crossroads, if we're willing, we don't start out willing to wait. Our natural response is not willing to wait. It's usually anger or doubt when we're told to wait. Fortunately, God is gracious and merciful, understanding of our tendencies. Simply feeling deep, complex emotions and waiting, especially for significant things like a pregnancy or a job, is not necessarily sinful in itself, but we can decide where those emotions take us. We can decide to exalt these feelings. We might act on them by taking matters into our own hands, or perhaps we will not act, but we'll make an idol out of the good for which we are waiting. My brothers and sisters, every passing day is another log on the fire of bitterness, impatience, ingratitude, perhaps even resentment against the God who won't give us what we want right now. Or by God's grace, we can choose to wait as he intends. Waiting on the Lord is the opposite of running ahead of the Lord. And it's the opposite of bailing out on the Lord, writes John Piper. It's staying at your appointed place while he says stay, or it's going at his appointed pace while he says go. It's not impetuous. It's not despairing. My brothers and sisters, we have the choice then to take a deep breath, release our clenched hands, and let God be God. And while we are invited to continue hoping in his greatness, pray for God to work in you. Certainly only one of these options will bring us joy as we seek to accept and rejoice in God's handling of our lives, including his timing. We can ask God to work in us two main things so that our waiting is not in vain: humility and trust. Number one, humility. Sometimes when I found myself getting impatient and upset, I will remind myself that God is the one who puts me here. My life is not my own. This is humility. It is coming to realize that we are a breath and God owes us nothing in Psalm 39:5. Number two, trust. Then comes trust, which means believing at least two things about God. Number one, he is powerful. And number two, that he is loving. Believing God is powerful means that we know he is in charge of what's happening. Things are not arbitrarily out of his control. He is capable of both helping us and changing things. Listen, much of our anxiety and waiting is because we forget that God is able to make all grace abound to you in 2 Corinthians 9:8. My brother, you are not the mercy of your circumstances. Believing God is loving means that there is care and purpose behind all that he does. It means that he is faithful to help us right now and bring us blessings later. It means that his judgment, his timing is always perfect. True, he owes us nothing, yet he has promised to give us everything we need in Philippians 4:19. Even during that long road of silence, God cares deeply for us. Like David said, wait for the Lord, be strong, and let your heart take courage. Wait for the Lord, Psalm 27:14. Secondly, there's the blessings of waiting in faith, or lastly, rather, there's some great figures in the Bible: Abraham, Joseph, Moses, David. They all had to wait on God for years. Everything that happened in the meantime was used to prepare them inwardly as well as outwardly. Then when they reached their promise, they were blessed beyond measure. My brothers and sisters, God invites us to trust in his goodness today and his faithfulness tomorrow, relinquishing our control to him and trusting in his way. It unites our hearts with his. It creates a level of maturity and character that we will take with us into the future and enables us to enjoy his future blessings all the more. Listen, God is working while you are waiting. Be encouraged today, my brothers and sisters. May the Lord bless you real good till we meet again.